Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, and welcome back to the Vicarage here at Penn. Nice to see you. I hope you're well and cheerful, and looking forward to our Bible talk for today. Don't know what you have planned for today. It looks like a nice warm day out there. Dare I say, it looks like a nice day for a game of golf, which is what I fully intend to do. But we are working our way through the Gospel of Luke, and isn't it wonderful stuff? We're in chapter 4. Set the scene. Jesus has been baptized. I think I had it in chapter 3. In chapter 4, he's been sent out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, which he's done. Then yesterday we had him standing up in the synagogue at Nazareth, his hometown, with this amazing manifesto, and he wasn't particularly well received, especially amongst the high people. And then he goes back to a place called Capernaum, which is where what our today's reading is about today. So we are Luke's Gospel, chapter 4, and I'm starting to read at verse 31. Here goes. Jesus went down to Capernaum, a city in Galilee, and was teaching them on the Sabbath. They were astounded at his teaching, because he spoke with authority. In the synagogue there was a man who had the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, "Let us alone! What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." When the demon had thrown him down before them, he came out of him without having done him any harm. They were all amazed and kept saying to one another, "What kind of utterance is this?" For with authority and power he commanded the unclean spirits, and out they come. And report about him began to reach every place in the region. After leaving the synagogue, he entered Simon's house. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked him about her. Then he stood over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her. Immediately she got up and began to serve them. As the sun was setting, all those who had any who were sick with any various kinds of diseases brought them to him. He laid hands on each of them and cured them. Demons also came out of many, saying, "You're the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew that he was the Messiah. At daybreak he departed and went into a deserted place, and the crowds were looking for him. When they reached him, they wanted to prevent him from leaving them. But he said to them, "I must proclaim the good news of the kingdom of God to the other cities also, for I was sent for this purpose." So he continued proclaiming the message in the synagogues of Judea. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear Jesus doing a miracle, it's tempting to think, yeah, here we go again. Because let's face it, Jesus does a lot of amazing things. He walks on water, he heals blind people, deaf people, people that commute people, he makes lame people walk, he brings people back to life, he heals people of all sorts of things. And it's tempting on one level just to kind of think, here's a few more miracle stories. Yeah, we get the picture. So why does Jesus do this? And why are we told about it? Yeah, was he just showing off? Or, did Luke really see the point in ramming it home to us 23 times or whatever? So what's kind of going on here? Well, I think what we need to remember is what you have to do with these readings is pick underneath it a little bit and get the message that's behind it. Because what you see here, and if you look carefully at this reading this morning, in all manner of ways, things that Jesus does, and again, things that people say about Jesus point to something amazing about Jesus. Through the things that are said by other people and by the things that Jesus does, it all points to something very special about Jesus. And I suppose I simply want to kind of remind us before we get stuck into the text this morning, to ask ourselves the kind of basic obvious question, the kind of thing preachers do ask us, which is this: to what extent do our lives point people towards Jesus? When we do things in church, are we doing it to point to people to Jesus, or are we trying to point to our own achievements, things that we've done, or the glory of mankind, or how terribly clever we are, or whatever it would be? So what are we trying to achieve? And I think there's kind of an important reminder here that we need to remember as Christians and as members of churches and as churches that everything we must do must point to Jesus. I always say that's why they used to put spires on churches, to point in God's direction. And I think there's a kind of salutary reminder to us all, really, to make sure that what we do and what we say points people in the direction of Jesus. And Luke does it, and so should we. So here in this reading, you have kind of four incidents. First, you've got this man in Capernaum who's got the evil spirit, which Jesus casts out. Then you've got the incident with Jesus' sick mother-in-law, but Jesus was very popular in the Peter household that night. You can actually go to the place where it all happened in Capernaum. I've been there. So there's Peter's mother-in-law. There's healing her. Then he goes out and he heals sort of as many sick people as they can find. They kind of bring them out, and Jesus heals all of them in the evening. And then the following day, you get that he's gone out there to preach the word, preach the gospel in surrounding villages and that sort of thing. So you've got four incidents here. But I think there are two main kind of messages, apart from point to Jesus, which this does anyway, is just think for a minute about some of the things that are actually said in the reading. Firstly, it talks about, in verse 32, he spoke with authority, okay? Then you've got even the demons saying, describing him as being the Holy One of God. Then you've got him casting out demons. So you've got, and they go on to say in verse 36, what kind of authority it is, with what power and authority he commands unclean spirits, and out they come. So here you've got you've got him being the Son of God, the Most High God. You've got him speaking with authority. You've got him acting with authority. Then you've got him having power over sickness. He's clearly got power. He rebuked the fever, and the fever left as well. Then you've got him having not just healed one person, you've got him healing lots of people. You might just prove it wasn't an accident. And then you've got to say, it says in verse 41 that he is the Messiah, and so on and so on and so on. So here in this short 10 or 15 verses, you've got a whole series of big things that Jesus does, demonstrating his power over sickness, his power over demons, and various other things. Okay. You've also got him called, as I say, some pretty massive things like the Messiah, the Most High God, the Holy One of God, the Son of God. I mean, all manner of these things. So I guess the theme here that the fancy word is Christological, is what it tells us about Jesus. Here we have not just a whole series of miracles, but a whole lot of things that are said and done, things that are said about Jesus, things that are done by Jesus that are pointing him to being a truly amazing person. Dare I say, pointing to him being God. So that's the first message. I think the other message is you've got to kind of tie it in a bit with the message yesterday. When he was in Nazareth, he talked about being the Spirit of the Lord's upon me, because he's anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to send me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. So the previous day, he stood up in Nazareth, previous reading, and he's announced that this is what he's going to do. Here at the end of chapter 4, you see him going out and doing it. So people who are captive, people who've been captive by demons and captive by illness and things like that, you got Jesus proclaiming release to these people. And he talks about, because he wanted to bring good news to the poor. And in the fourth, right at the end of our reading for today, you got him going out to the other villages. So the point I'm making here is that yesterday, in the reading yesterday, he quotes from Isaiah, his manifesto, what he is going to do it. And here at the end of chapter 4, you have him actually getting on with it. So in the beginning of the chapter, he talks about or middle of the chapter, he talks about he's going to do it. This wonderful manifesto. And then at the end of Luke chapter 4, you've got him actually putting it into practice. And here you have him achieving it. So, three things from this morning's reading. Firstly, to remind us that this reading isn't just a whole series of Jesus showing off a lot of yet another miracle. Actually, the whole thing points to some pretty amazing things that are said and done about Jesus, all pointing to Jesus. And again, it reminds us really that we need to make sure that our lives point to Jesus in our own turn. Secondly, you've got a whole lot of things that are said about Jesus and done by Jesus. Again, pointing that fact that he's a remarkable man, that he's, a son of the Most High God, that he's got power over sickness, he's got power over demons, that he spoke with authority. I could go on and on and on. A lot of things that are said about Jesus, that he really is the main event. And finally, to us, how the whole thing ties together. That yesterday, quoting from Isaiah, he comes this wonderful manifesto, which he preaches to this not particularly responsive group in Nazareth. But here at the end of the chapter in Capernaum, he's demonstrating exactly how he's going to put it into practice in his life, in his preaching, by what he says and by what he does. Hope that makes sense. God bless you. Have a lovely day and lovely morning.